So this is the first time that we're recording this together.
I know we're in the same room,
We're in the same room.
in the same state,
Yeah,
and in the same city.
that's right. So this is really an interesting experience because since the beginning of time, which is, of course, we're dividing the creation of humanity post for Coven's sake and before Coven's sake.
Yeah.
So that's how we're doing this. This never happened. So we are always remote. You are in America, I'm in Portugal, and for the first time. So this is the first time.
And it's so much better in person.
Oh, it is.
So much more fun.
Well, first of all, because we have coffee that we just had, and so this is good. All right, so we have a couple of things. You have a very interesting invitation that came to you.
Yeah, so I received an email, a contact from a local state prison, and that is a maximum security state prison. And they were asking for help, guidance in teaching as well as leading their inmates in craft, right, in Wiccan ritual. And it really has me sort of questioning in the sense of, is this something as priesthood that I should really think about and look into? And I already know right off the bat that this would not be teaching prisoners or inmates or anyone really Alexandrian craft, because that's an initiatory tradition. So we're not talking that. Obviously, for something like this would be your really general paganism, Wicca, Raymond Buckland / Scott Cunningham type of.
Yes, because there is a couple of rules for this to the system of paganism ministry in prisons in America. There's boundaries. There's a couple of things that you can't really do. One of the very interesting examples of this is that you can't bring a tarot deck with naked women in like the star, for instance. You can't really have that, which is very interesting. I'm assuming this is for men or maybe even for women because...
Yeah, I don't know if nudity across the board.
So,
and of course, no blades.
No blades. So
I'm wondering about candles. And I'm ignorant about
Right.
So therefore, I'm wondering about candles. But then what I was also thinking just as an Alexandrian priesthood, that here, we are dealing with those who are incarcerated for really heinous crimes.
Right.
So we're talking, the worst of the worst. So we're talking about murderers and rapists and pedophiles. And my question is, well, what does this do to you? What does this do to your soul, your divine spark, if you have, participated in these activities? And in our tradition, does this make for an initiate? Or do we even offer redemption? I think a lot of people might be looking for redemption, which is sort of I always think of like Catholicism and absolution, which the priest decides, actually. If the Catholic priest decides whether or not you get absolution or not for your sins.
We're talking about a different framework. So this is what, to be clear, this is what inspired you to do this.
Oh, yes, I never thought about this.
Yeah.
This is something that came right out of
an email.
Exactly. But out of the blue, it was one of those like, what is the maximum security prison? And what have I done? Why are they emailing me? So this was, completely out of the blue. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating. You think about like people's constitutional rights. Inmates have the right to practice religion. We know the Catholic Christianity is all firmly established. I know for like Wicca and paganism, that's relatively new for them to be able to practice, probably since the 80s or late 90s. But then just thinking about it from an Alexandrian perspective.
And of course, you don't remember ever to ask somebody, have you committed a crime? In an interview, when they ask for initiation, you don't really.
No, I have to say it's not on the top of my list. It's not something right
now. No, actually not.
I really think about.
Which is very interesting to think about this, because what does that do? I mean, if they say, yes, I killed the person, what would you do? Would you say, no, sorry, we can't really? I mean, why? And then why? That's the question. Why would you say that or not say, say, no, that's fine? Or would you go further and say, now what happened? Was it involuntary? And
I know, were you saving a family?
Right. Are you saving a family? Are you saving somebody?
So
and then you kind of
come into ethics.
Right. So this is a complex thing that I'm sure there will not be one particular answer for this, but we could go into this generally. What would you think about it? Because there are nuances, complex things, extraneous circumstances that are absolutely a weight here. So we wouldn't have just one answer. But then this led you to think about, okay, so if you kill somebody, what would that do to you?
Yeah.
And how would that be accepted or not accepted? And according to what we think about the Alexandrian witchcraft.
Yeah, that made me just think about, everyone's divine spark. I think
Right.
that's what I started thinking about. Okay, everyone's divine spark. And then what happens to you if you do commit these types of crimes? And if you read the old magical grimoires about consorting with demons, how do you best traffic with demons? Well, you're trying to debase yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Debase your soul. You're trying to diminish your spark. And therefore, I'm asking myself, does that happen when you do such things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And how an action...
So I'm actually thinking philosophically,
what is the consequence of this? Right.
Like, what are the consequences of these
Right.
actions?
So I think that it brings us back to consciousness of self and consciousness of your own divine spark, your own divine self. And in the Alexandrian tradition, we do have a very good system for developing this consciousness to be used in circle and in our temples, and developing yourself and the consciousness of this divine spark, if you want to call it.
You want to use that.
That metaphor. If you think about it, you're extinguishing somebody else's flame. What does that do? Dion Fortune talks about this a little bit when she talks about what happens if you really do something like that, heinous, actions or crimes, or even, negative magic or whatever it is that in reverse. So she talks about this wheel as a figurative thing, that the wheel is always rotating in this incarnated life towards evolution. So she says in Psycho Self-Defense, she says, if we are concentrated on a work of malediction and death in order to achieve an act of revenge, we cannot immediately reverse the spin of the soul and reconcentrate of work of wisdom and redemption. We may like the soul moving with the tide of evolution to a wheel spinning clockwise or docile, and not a soul moving against the tide of evolution to a wheel spinning counterclockwise or windowshins. The normal movement of the soul is docile, forward with the current of evolution. So it's a wheel that will take you into that evolution and development, spiritually development, that will take you to a higher vibration. So if you do things like this, or if you do negative magic, she talks about negative magic, it doesn't really talk about anything about crimes, but if you do something like that, the wheel will stop and probably will begin to rotate in reverse. So you're basically not evolving. So you're going into a regression kind of state of evolution, which is really not evolution at all. And you will suffer the consequences of this, because as evolution of the spirit will have consequences into your own life in the physical, this also have consequences in your life in the physical. Even negative actions could put you in a place of have to do purification in order to progress.
Yeah.
There's examples of this actually historically in the Alexandrian tradition. So you need to go through a period of purification in order for you to continue and to actually progress and continue your work. Does purification actually reset that?
Does it reset?
Does it reset that wheel?
Yeah. Ooh. That's what happens when we're together.
Yeah.
Same land.
Yeah.
You raise a really interesting point, just tangentially. And is physically murdering someone, is it the same as people who pride themselves in cursing and doing negative magic and trying to kill other people by magic? I do know a person who quite gleefully says, "Oh, I keep little coffins in my closet just in case. I need to put someone in it." I'm like, is that any different?
Right. So I think that there is no judgment in terms of action being is it more or less? Just like black magic and white magic is just magic. So I think that what is actually happening here is a regressive or progressive kind of, are you going in the right direction or are you going in the reverse direction?
Yeah.
So I don't think that there is any qualification. I think that there is negative and positive, and that is the measure where the wheel actually go further or backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So cursing or killing or whatever it would be. I mean, we know some types of magic that actually kill, or they're designed to kill. So that would be the same. And a very wise person once said, do not curse anyone if you don't really mean it, just because you're angry.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be angry. So, and I'm saying a little bit too much that I wanted to, but so I don't really think there is any qualification. So I think that it's either going forward or backwards. So whatever it is that you're doing, either being whacking somebody to kill them, or cursing, or even doing some kind of action that was very negative, that doesn't involve killing people, but it's in that particular realm. So I think that it's a vibrational zone that you actually are vibrating at that particular frequency. And then you are actually going into a reverse or a stop of that wheel of evolution.
I think Brian Kane on Coven said really well, I'm going to paraphrase, about cursing or death magic. If you're going to burn someone, you have to be willing to be burned.
I heard that in a different way, where is, if you're willing to burn, you have to burn somebody magically, right?
Yep.
You have to be willing to do it in the physical to the person right in front of you. So you have to actually be willing to do that.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Because we can always talk about, well, when is this really a practical conversation? How many times does this actually come up?
Right.
Where you're going to have an initiate, and then whether or not, like, okay, they've served their sentence and paid their dues to society. Have they paid their dues spiritually or ethically and whatnot? So that might be a really rare situation, but a situation that has come up with me personally are military veterans, right? Yeah. Military veterans who have killed in the act of service, right? For the protection of nation or protection of.
And this is not involuntary. This is actually something that it's consciously. They agree to that.
They do, yeah,
and they will
maybe hesitantly.
Maybe accidentally.
Yep, absolutely.
But they do. So they do, and sometimes there's conflict in the individual about this, even when they are in the field doing it. So. Absolutely. So it's very interesting. And I think, how does that affect the individual's spiritual self when they do this?
Yeah.
And how, we know the damage that is coming out of a war, for instance, for somebody mentally. But what does it do spiritually?
Yes, and bringing them through initiation and then bringing that into your circle. And, it's well known that, Alex Sanders would not initiate anyone who had a career dealing with death.
And I think that, talking about warriors, right? So we're talking about warriors. Warriors' action is mainly to defend.
Yeah.
So they will eventually kill if there's no other,
We have a Department of Defense,
that's right? So we're talking about policemen. We're talking about all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's another thing. This is the question: what does it do to you?
I have no answers.
I have no answers. This is
at all.
We're just putting it out there, so that people can actually think.
I would really love to hear what other people think. About this and what situations that they have come across. And you raised a good point. I think this is also maybe a few episodes ago. Is that in terms of, because then we have this moniker of priesthood. So I wrestled with that email. As a priest, is it my priestly duty to serve in this way, to serve these individuals that are incarcerated? And even if I can't teach them Alexandria, obviously, certainly teach them, general paganism. So is that my duty to do so? And you sort of raise this point about like, well, are we actually priests outside of a circle?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so therefore, does my circle actually extend outside of my
to the non-initiates
of my non-initiates, right? So therefore, if I see someone in pain on the bus, am I supposed to be like, you're with a priest now? And I can tell me your
problems. Right. So we're not therapists.
Yeah,
and that's the teaching. We're not therapists. There's 2 points of view on this that I came across. One is that absolutely not. You shouldn't be doing. You're a priest or a priestess inside of a magic circle. You're an initiate, of course, always, and a priestess and witch. or priest and witch, but it doesn't really extend outside. And the reason why is to maintain the sacred within and your office within the circle and the magic circle. Two activities there actually are private and secret and all of that, and to keep the mystery. So that's one point of view. You shouldn't. So there is another point of view that says, but I'm always a priest, and I will do my activities of helping others like that. Now, 2 points here, 1 and 2, which is the first one is that you say actually that you are a priest, and you're somebody that is mystical. You don't really necessarily tell them what you are really. And then the other one that you do this totally anonymous. That person doesn't know that you are a priest, that you are an initiate, and that you could help them the same way. But again, we're not therapists, so we wouldn't go far away as I'm doing therapist sessions with people in the bus. But you do have that ability to, and people come to you. I mean, I can't tell you how many people come to me and tell me all of their life.
Well, exactly, right?
Right.
I'm like, were you like the friend psychologist back in high school and all this?
Yeah.
Right? Because people just, because they unconsciously see the light, right? So therefore they gravitate towards it. Yeah. And you raise a good point too, like, because I think a lot of us are so born or inculcated in terms of Christianity and the Christian framework, where Christianity, you get the sacraments, at least in Catholicism, and you are a priest always outside of the church, and part of your priestly duties is charity, one of the most important theological virtues. So therefore, you do have orphanages, right? You do sponsor hospitals quite publicly, and I don't know if we have that in witchcraft. The only one I could think about would be like the Cabot tradition, where they are really, really present in their charitable works as priesthood. Well, you're saying that maybe with Alexandrians, perhaps not all of us, right, would do it much more.
Alex and Maxine did this many years ago for
under the table.
No, they would, the feast would come, and then there would be spare food and spare, things, and they would leave it to the house on the doorstep of the houses that they knew that these families could,
but anonymously.
I don't know if it was. I think it was actually, because it's a sense of doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because what does it matter if it is coming from Alex and Maxine or if it's coming from somebody else that it's totally like Judy down the the neighbor,
which is very different than a Christian charity,
which is something that is actually very interesting, because it goes almost on pride, isn't it? That you are
slippery slope,
right? So you're I do charities and UNICEF and all of that. So the institution of charity, I don't think we do have it. This reminds me of that line of Bond. The first thing that you need to understand about us, Mr. Bond, is that we are everywhere. So, and we are everywhere. We are everywhere, but we are anonymous, and we do what we do because we have nurses, we have doctors in hospitals, we have initiates everywhere in the most diverse professions that are actually helping humanity. We actually have people that are initiates in charities as directors, but they're not saying that they're Alexandrian. Yeah. So we do what we do.
This all ties into priesthood outside the circle. That's
right.
So
right.
Yeah.
So we do it, but we don't announce it. Yeah. And I think that's the difference between us and other charities.
And another point I was thinking too about this, going back, right, is also, do we believe as witches? Do we believe in and do we offer redemption? So, in Catholicism, a priest can give absolution. So if the priest thinks, and it's really up to the priest, if the priest thinks that you have repented and you are redeemable, then you can get absolution.
I would be a horrible Catholic priest because I would always say no.
You would be like, not yet.
Sorry.
Keep working. Exactly.
500 Hail Marys.
Right. So it's built into Christianity. Like St. Paul was out there slaughtering Christians, and then he's literally saw the light and converted, and so it's built into
we don't have that. So we don't really have that. We our method is actually of self-development, self-consciousness, and, the work that you do personally and collectively in a coven, the contributions that you do, the practice, the experience of that will make you evolve spiritually. So we don't really need anyone. We really don't have intermediaries. So that's the difference between us and them. We are priesthood. We don't really have congregation because our congregation is priesthood.
Yeah.
We don't really have that.
Yeah.
So because of that, we don't have an authority compared to the authority. Now that's another topic is the high priest and high priestess in a coven compared to the priest in the church, the vicar in the church, that is the one that actually do the heavy work of spirituality, that knows more than anybody else, or that will, so that's another question, is that it's actually that, can we compare? I don't really think that we can. We are a little different. We are all priesthood in a circle. We're all in the service of the gods. We are servants of the circle. We don't really have that particular quality in terms of, we're better than anybody else. I always say, the other day, an initiate came to me and he said, it's such an honor to meet you. And you kind of like, what do I say to that? What do I say?
I know. That's how
no, what I say. And I love this initiate. I really do. And then he hugged me, and then I said, we're all priesthood.
Yeah,
we're all priesthood. And he said, well, but I said, no, we are. Mm-hmm. We are all priesthood, and the service is the circle. So that's basically it. And the gods.
And this is the thing, because we've talked about this before, Karagan, and this is where, am I a hypocrite? Because we talked very plainly about seekers and initiates and saying, it doesn't matter if I like you. Doesn't matter if we can break bread together and have a party together. It doesn't matter if, we like the same jingles and the same shows. As long as they show true vocation, right? So therefore, if you did have an initiate who has been incarcerated for, and I'm talking heinous, right? Heinous crimes. Not talking about traffic violations. Heinous crimes. We served their sentence. Then it becomes, and you might seek vocation. But do you, right? Do you initiate, right? Or do you not initiate? Or do we have mechanisms that can help us with this? Or
so this is very interesting, because the priestess was actually talking about this to us. There are ceremonies that we do to seek a little bit more of information, being that divinatory or not. But we do have a ceremony called, now I don't remember what it's called, permission of the goddess, that will help us to have that insight, that confirmation. Because, we're human, we're still incarnate. So we really, our wisdom can fail us, and it's very limited and very, very, very,
with our own biases,
right,
and prejudices. Absolutely.
Yeah, and of course we don't see the bigger picture. So we do have those mechanisms to say yes or no, but that's I think something that those who are listening to us need to think about. What are they doing? And we're talking about priesthood, of course. But what are they doing? What is the choice here? How do you do an informed choice? So that's, I think, a question for you.
A question, exactly. And whether or not you're going to veto the goddess.
That's right. Yes. Well, that's a big mistake, I think, because of that. Yeah. I don't
like that answer.
No, I don't like that answer. It's like, I really do like the I Ching. I Ching is
I've never
method.
Heard of it.
Yeah, it's a method of divination. And there's one thing in the I Ching that it's very interesting, because if you do a reading and then you don't like that one and do another one, you risk of getting, stop asking, we gave you the answer.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fast.
So it's very good, because that's embedded into this particular divination system. So yes, so if you receive an insight of the goddess telling you do not initiate this person, or maybe it's not really good now, then I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it's a thorny issue that I've never thought about. until I got that email.
Yeah.
What I would do, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
what I would actually do.
But this is very interesting because this is actually something that comes up with priesthood, that it's in higher degree. So it's the, of course the coven all will, eventually wait on it, but it is the work of the third degree, or the person that is in front of the coven, or the high priesthood, to really kind of, and I always say, high priesthood, the high in high priesthood, it's about quality of work, not really being better than or above any of the other initiates.
Yeah.
So, and that's very important. But I think that's the question is, would you initiate somebody that has that kind of experience, let's call it experience, and what would that do to them spiritually? And if there's something that really does happen, would you confirm that with an alternative or even a ceremony that it's done by us? Do you confirm, and would you go with that answer?
Yes, and would you go with that answer?
That's it.
And override your base instincts?
That's right.
Or your own sort of programming. I have not responded to this email because I wanted to hear your opinion, and love to hear others' opinions. On this before.
Yeah, before you go in.
Yeah.
And
before I respond.
And consort with.
So obviously a very limited level, but.
Yeah.